was Beterbiev and Bivol 2. It was a wild, wild atmosphere. The Russians came, the British fans were over. The Saudis now are familiar with these fighters. They remember the first fight and they came out for the second fight. The atmosphere was finally electric. The building was much smaller. We were in an arena. So it was far less seats. I think I want to say 5,000 or 6,000 seater, but it was packed. It was the kind of energy that you want. And I said that this was going to be like Canelo Triple G, that trilogy. And I think the second fight paid off just like Canelo Triple G did the second time.
Yeah, now I want to start on the arena talk for a second, but here stateside, there was a lot of talk about that it had to be the card of the century had to be downsized. And I guess for comparison's sake, they fought in front of about 1,000 more people than Keyshawn Davis fought against Baranchyk here. What are your takeaways from that for a second there? Because there's a lot,
I mean, we're in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, so unless those people who are making that criticism were willing to foot the bill to fly out here, put themselves up in a hotel, and buy a ticket, then it's probably the reason why there's not as many fans, because these people in this country are just now learning about boxing. And yes, it's a much smaller venue, and it was a great choice to make it a smaller venue because the fans who saw the first fight, they return for the second fight. And I see every time more and more Saudis are becoming organic fans of boxing. They're learning who they like. They're picking their favorites. They're starting to be able to pick winners and losers. That's how a culture becomes acclimated to the sport. These guys it's just gotten here in the last 5 years and really just got at this level in the last 2 years. So yeah, there's not a lot of local people that are going to pack these arenas like it would happen in LA or Vegas or New York or even London for sure. So, and there's way more people flying over every time. So atmosphere was great. Downsizing was the right choice. And it was a swell atmosphere. It was fantastic. And anybody who wants to make the atmosphere better, come on in. Doors open.
Well, to get started on the fight itself, I agree with you that part two was better than part one. And part two delivered more of what we were hoping to get in part one. And it is similar to Canelo Triple G in that vein. I still think Canelo Triple G 2 is more of a classic than Beterbiev Bivol 2. Some people might disagree with that, but that's just my take. And so this really was round 13. They picked up where they left off. I've seldom seen two fighters this evenly matched. And in many ways, they're mirrors of each other stylistically. I mean, Beterbiev likes to come forward. Bivol prefers the back foot. But at the end of the day, they're two really strong Russian fighters who are very durable, in great condition, and they both fight out of these excellent high guards. So there's just not a lot of clean punches being landed, to their credit, because that good high guard each of them have. And there are moments like in round 7 of the first fight, like in more rounds in fight number 2, where they do exchange. But for the most part, a lot of their 24 rounds has been my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn. And so, you know, they're growing on me. I got Morales Barrera right behind me, right? And what I'm getting at is I've been 2/3 through this movie now. So I do want to see Act 3. I want to see it all the way. I've sat through it this long. I want to see the end of the movie now. But I was just going to say, go ahead, Rahim.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there,
No,
Sean.
you're good.
I was just going to interject that I wasn't wildly entertained the first time out. You know, I appreciate what I saw, the skill level, all the stuff. I was scoring the rounds. I thought Bivol edged it. It was all the boxing kind of science of it, but it wasn't wildly entertaining. And I was like, you know what? They needed that first 12 rounds to feel each other out, which is an odd way to describe what happened in the first fight, considering, how talented these guys are. And it was action, but it wasn't this kind of action. You're right. It was a 13th round and what I think is going to be a 36-round fight. It wasn't, I don't think it really picked up where it left off, in the sense that Beterbiev was coming on. I think if it was the 13th round for me, it might have been a 2-round fight because he would have knocked people out 2 rounds later. Right. But what it did do was pick the energy up. It was like, okay, we're starting fast. We know that the other one is bringing a high guard as you described, but also each fighter felt like they should have had more action in the first fight, that they needed to be busier, that they needed to win earlier rounds. And so I thought Bivol came in with the intent of starting fast, and he knew that Beterbiev would do the same. And I thought Bivol won the early, like maybe 1 or 2 rounds, right. And then Beterbiev came on and it was like, I'm not going to let Bivol bank these early rounds like I did last time. And it got a little murky there. I was like, I don't know if Bivol's going to be able to pull this out, because it looked like Beterbiev was coming on and wasn't going to let up off the gas. And I asked Bivol in the post-fight press conference if he had intentionally kind of left something in the engine for the last round, and he had learned the lesson.
Tim Bradley told me after the fight he downshifted. That's the term he used. In the middle of the fight, he downshifted his energy to conserve for the back half.
That's exactly what I believe. That's exactly what I asked people in the post-fight press conference. He didn't exactly cop to it, but he didn't deny it either. And I think Tim Bradley is right. I'm right. That's exactly what happened. And it's a gamble to do that. You know, don't forget, one judge had the fight even. So you downshift, and if you do that when Beterbiev shifts up, that could be the end of the show. Or you may not find an opening to close the last rounds if momentum swings and you can't get it back. So that's a dangerous choice to make, but the wise choice in the end.
Yeah, and I'm going to get to that technical breakdown in a second and all that, because when I say round 13, I meant more they picked up where they left off in terms of it's such even. It's so nip and tuck almost every single round. Both fighters were better this time around. Well, shit, I'll get to the technical stuff now. Like, you know, Beterbiev right after, like, so I think Beterbiev definitely won rounds 3, 4, 5, and 6, and I thought he definitely won the 12th. So one judge having it a draw, I'm not mad at that, because those first 2 rounds were close. They were kind of feeling out rounds. And, you know, if you find another round outside of those 5 that I thought were clearly Beterbiev's, then you have a draw. It was that kind of close fight. I thought Bivol did no worse than a draw. I thought it was either 115, 113 Bivol or 114, 114, and Beterbiev would have kept the belts. And, man, it looked like after 6 rounds, after Beterbiev won 4 in a row, he was rolling downhill, and it was about to be a wrap. It looked like Bivol was starting to fold a little bit. We saying he downshifted his energy, right? We find that's probably was a tactical thing, but it felt like, yeah, Beterbiev's on his way to a late stoppage. This is getting Cotto Margarito vibes. And then Bivol, and there's another Tim Bradley term he taught me, he drew an invisible line in the sand. He started to plant his feet, and he threatened with the counter punching, and he let them go. He let the counters go. Beterbiev, underrated defense. Like, a lot of that stuff he was catching. Plenty of it, a fair amount of it was piercing the high guard. But that leads me to my next point. These two, because of their high guards and because they do a lot of my turn, your turn, as much as I appreciate this fight and what these two fighters are about and the styles that they fight in each other with the Russian, former Soviet Union style, for 24, tense rounds fought at a pitched battle, these two failed to produce a lot of explosive and memorable moments. And what I mean by that is Morales Barrera in their 3 fights, there's multiple round of the years, there's multiple just unforgettable exchanges and moments. In Bo Holyfield, you got the round 10 of the first fight. You got Holyfield with a heart disease getting up off the canvas in the 3rd fight a couple times, dropping Bo. Ali Frazier, Ali going down in the 15th off a hook, and even Andre Ward and Kovalev's 2 fights, which weren't for undisputed. They were for 3 of the 4 belts, but there was just more of a juxtaposition between the 2 of them. 2 very different fighters and men stylistically and outside the ring. These 2 are very similar. They're cut from the same cloth. They're from the same place, from the same school. And I appreciate that. It's this rivalry they've had since teenagers. And Bivol, I can appreciate that he overcame the bully. This was his 1980s movie. He's always been in the shadow of him since he was a teenager. He's the scary, impenetrable, stoic force that knows no fear in Artur Beterbiev. And he, unlike Beterbiev after his loss, and by the way, great fighters make excuses when they lose all the time, so don't be too hard on Beterbiev. Yeah, he's being a sore loser. Most of the great ones are sore losers. But it was something on Bivol's end to be so introspective and so accountable and make no excuses, and it paid dividends. It allowed him to make the adjustments and take the play away from Beterbiev in fight number 2 when it looked like Beterbiev might get him out of there. But I say all that to say, again, I want to see fight 3 because I've seen acts 1 and 2. I got to see the end of this movie. But the purists will try to convince you that these were just better fights than they were. They're good. They're really good fights. Fought at the highest level. But I just think if you compare it to the other great trilogies, even like they have yet to, the name of the card, Rahim, was called The Last Crescendo. They've yet to really have their crescendo. Like, what's the standout? You tell me, what's the standout moment in their 24 rounds?
I think the third fight will actually be that crescendo. I think it's going to take these first 24 for them to get so familiar to be able to, someone is going to penetrate the other. I'm predicting a knockout in the rubber match. After the fight, Bivol, to your point about them having come up together, said to Beterbiev that he respects him, not just as a fighter, but as his mentor. Like, he was a kid and seen Beterbiev dominating, and he saw himself in his eyes. Like, he was like, this is what I want to be. This is what I want to do. He was looking up to him. It was like the kid who was chasing someone he thought was great, and the only way he would ever feel great himself is if he could beat what he thought his youth was, the master. So that was, I believe, the emotional content of the fight last night. I don't think there's any bad blood between these guys really at all. There is just healthy competition and stoic resolve that either one of them, speaking for themselves, will be the best. This man cannot overcome me. So in the first fight, Bivol never really said that. He didn't say he felt like he got robbed. He felt like he didn't do enough to be perfect, and perfect is what it would take to beat Beterbiev. And that's why he went internal. That's why he never offered an excuse. I believe that's why he won the second fight more convincingly. For Beterbiev's sake, I think while he is not a talker, while he's not going to tell you what he's thinking, he definitely knew that he had to be better himself the second time out. He knew he had to start faster. He knew that he couldn't just chase Bivol the whole fight and close the show strong or look for the knockout and depend on that. He fought a better fight. I think that these things are escalating. Both fights are standing on the shoulders of the other. And yes, in the arena, it's different. I was even thinking that while I was watching. I was like, on TV, this fight is not as exciting as it is in the arena. So it's funny that we have the criticism about the atmosphere, because this is a fight where you're present for it. And obviously I had an incredible view. If I do say so myself, yeah. I was like well positioned. I was on my feet the whole fight. I stood behind the comms tables, and Sean, you know what that is. But for those who don't, it's 3 rows from the ring. Usually we in the press have to sit on that side behind those screens, but I stood up from behind those screens and I was level with the second rope. And it was maybe the best possible way to watch this fight, because I was right there in between and being able to see each shot. The energy, I got to tell you, in the place was fantastic. The Russians were cheering for their guy. Like I said, they were all around. By the 6th, 7th round, they thought, like you thought, Sean, that it was just a couple more rounds tops before Beterbiev stops Bivol, and they couldn't wait to see it. And then when the energy shifted, when Bivol started coming on, they started sweating. They started looking at each other like, oh my God, how is this going to close? But they kept thinking that Beterbiev had this one punch knockout. And that's really what they were expecting. At any point, this one punch was going to penetrate Bivol or catch him on the move, and the show was going to be over. So to watch the Russians on the emotional roller coaster and then at the end kind of deflate, but still wanted to hold on to maybe a Beterbiev one. The honest ones around me were looking at each other like, I don't know if he got this, but some of them were really like, he definitely got this. This is gonna be our fight. And when that first card was read, boy, everybody was on pins and needles. That place was quiet as a church mouse on a cotton ball. So I am so glad that Bivol got the decision. I think it was the right decision. If he hadn't gotten the decision, we'd all be crying like, foul. And I am so happy that it sets up the third fight. And I really feel like now in the light heavyweight division, we got yet another embarrassment of riches, because unfortunately for Benavidez, yet again, he has to wait in the ring. I mean, wait on the sidelines to get in the ring for somebody to give him a shot. But whoever comes out in this third fight absolutely has to give Benavidez a shot. And I can't wait to see it. That I've got two definite light heavyweight fights ahead of me that I can't wait to see. However, I don't think this third fight comes as quickly as the second one. I think both of these guys need some time to heal, Beterbiev and Bivol. But for Bivol's sake, he said as much. He's like, I've been fighting a lot. This is wear and tear on me, and I think the weight that it will take, if we even see this again this year, advantages Bivol.
Well, talking about how it sucks for Benavidez, and trust me, that took some of the wind out of my sails. The number one fight I wanted to see in boxing was Beterbiev and Benavidez for all the belts. That style matchup, that style clash, I really wanted to see it. So I was a little bummed out, but the better man won. And actually, it's not all bad for David Benavidez. There's a silver lining to this. They're going to beat the shit out of each other for another 12 rounds. If you get, and they're both going to get, 41. Bivol just turned 34. You're 28. You'll be 29 by the time you get your shot at these guys, if you get your shot. Silver lining there for Benavidez. And the fight a lot of people seem to want to see Benavidez in the interim, Callum Smith. Respect to Callum Smith. He fought a good fight, but Benavidez handles Callum Smith, but I get it. You got to fight the fights. You don't win on paper, but
it's a good fight.
Good fight. One that I definitely favor Benavidez to win, but good fight. And as for, few more thoughts on Beterbiev and Bivol. I think that, one of the cool things about boxing is all the different backgrounds that become champion. And when you're into boxing, you learn a little something by accident about other cultures, just by being a fan of boxing. And these two fights have been, Russia center stage, two guys from Russia center stage, and for the boxing world, for the purists to see. And, even though I grew up with a lot of Mexican friends, anytime Morales and Barrera fought or Juan Manuel Marquez, it was a celebration of their style and what they're all about. And that these two they have their form of masculinity from Russia. And I think a lot of the fans appreciate them for their stoicism and what they're all about, all the way down to how they fight, to their demeanor and everything. My one little critique would be, like, in those other fights, Morales, Barrera, and Holyfield Bowe and Ali Frazier, there's more punching in between each other's punches. And their styles, again, it's a lot of my turn, your turn, with some exchanges that are good too. But it's just, I agree that part 3 will be the crescendo. But it's like, how much juice is there to really squeeze from these guys? We've got, they don't got much to say.
No,
their fights are pretty good, but no one ever gets knocked down or in danger of being knocked out. And there's, so their fights are almost
get a knockout,
as they are.
You heard it here first. I see a knockout coming in the third fight.